Yo, what is going on, Titan Clan? It is your boy King Titan X here, back with another video. And to start off this month, we are going to be doing what if Issei was reincarnated as a slime. But before we get into the video, I would just like to say a couple of things. Number one, I'm actually going to be working on some sort of isekai series basically with Neptune and Xylo, at least I think that's how you pronounce his name. Xylo will basically be how should I say it? The artist for this new series that I'll basically be putting on YouTube from time to time while we basically are just waiting for this stuff. Just something fun to do on the side. And also we got a new intro. I'll be leaving the link to Not Majesty's channel in the description because of the fact that this intro was that much heat. Let's write that new intro, people.
Issei's vision was getting foggy. He was losing a lot of blood right now. He had just been stamped by his state, who all of a sudden had black wings. Everything was beginning to turn red for him. As his vision was beginning to become dark, Issei couldn't help but reflect on all of his life decisions.
He couldn't help but regret one thing though, and that was the fact he never ended up getting a real girlfriend. That and this whole situation as well. Piercing attacks nullified. Issei was confused. What was that voice just now? Was he hearing things? Was it like some sort of sound before the supposed bright light everyone always talked about that would always come and shine down on him? You know, the one where people would always say like run away from the light or something. The voice sounded almost devoid of any and all emotion, and they began to start listing out different things Issei would apparently become immune to or gain. To Issei though, all of this was just an illusion, something to ease the pain knowing that he was about to die. Life was really laughing at him, wasn't it? A bright light did appear not too long after, but something interesting happened. Issei, well, he wasn't dead. He tried moving his arms and legs, but realized he couldn't for some reason. He tried moving in any sort of fashion, only for him to begin to fall down what felt like a flight of stairs. He groaned in annoyance. It didn't necessarily hurt, but that didn't mean he didn't feel some uncomfort. He was confused as to where he was and why his vision was so weird. Issei attempted to look around, but there wasn't anything that gave him any hints as to where he was. Well, besides this weird and prominent aura emanating from somewhere, maybe that could have been his lead to an exit, since he didn't feel like being trapped in this boring place for long. He was alive and seemingly well after all. He ended up hopping over to where the aura was coming from, only to see a large, shadowy figure with glowing eyes on the other side. Just from their aura, Issei could tell that they were strong. He hoped that the monster didn't realize his appearance. Didn't realize his presence, I should say. But once he heard them start talking, He froze. "You there!" the dragon roared. Issei began to mentally sweat and turned around to the monster. He greeted the dragon quite awkwardly. The dragon introduced himself as Veldora and that they were the Storm Dragon. He was apparently trapped within some spell a hero from several years ago made to stop Veldora's torment. But according to Veldora, he was just having fun. He got carried away. That was all and nothing more, he promised. Issei was still skeptical of the creature though. He wasn't even too sure if they were a dragon in all honesty. Although he had a bit of an outline, his vision was still incredibly wonky right now. Pretty much as blind as a bat. "Hey, do you know how I can get my eyes checked? I'm pretty much only able to see, well, a little bit of an outline of you," Issei explained. Veldora interrupted from his backstory, paused and looked back at Issei. A couple of instructions later and Issei immediately screamed when he saw what Veldora really looked like. Far more intimidating than before. Was it too late to go back to being blind? Well, at least he knew for sure Veldora was a dragon, but there was another thing bothering Issei. He was talking to a dragon. Since when did dragons exist? Better yet, since when was he a slime? A red slime? Issei couldn't help but think about what happened to him against what he thought was the universe finally giving him a girlfriend. After all those years of getting beat up, the fact he was getting attention from a pretty girl like that should have honestly been suspicious in Issei's eyes. After all, it didn't make sense for her to even talk to him after he walked her to her classes. Did she really kill him back there? And did he really get reincarnated? No. No way. Impossible. Those were myths practiced way back in the day by Egyptians, Norse, and, well, a couple of other religions too. But then again, how else could he explain that he was now a talking slime speaking with a literal dragon? He had to be dreaming. Yeah, that was it. That would honestly make a lot of sense. Dreaming. No. This was too realistic to be a dream. Issei wanted to go and check out the rest of the place, eventually hoping to find an exit, but Veldora began to show a depressed sort of mood hearing that. What's wrong? Oh, nothing. It's just... well... I'm lonely, Veldora admitted. Issei's sweat jumped when he heard this. Of course a dragon many people already feared would be lonely. Well, he couldn't blame the dragon in all honesty. He'd be lonely if he were trapped in one spot for centuries with his powers slowly being drained from him as well. He felt bad for the dragon in all honesty. It seemed like they learned their lesson but weren't getting the chance to show their improvement. I'm not really sure about what to do in this situation. Suddenly a voice within his head began to speak. It was the same one from his last life. His eyes widened when he heard it. They introduced themselves as Great Sage and that Issei apparently had an ability by the name of Predator which allowed him to absorb and analyze pretty much anything. He could choose whether they would be fully absorbed or just be within what was seemingly an endless space within his stomach. Issei liked the second option and figured it was better than nothing. I have a proposition for you, Veldora. Oh? Neither one of us wants to be cooped up in this cave for longer than we have to. Unfortunately, that curse is stopping you, but I have this one ability that can work around that. Basically, I absorb you into my tummy and I can analyze the curse for you, finding a way to reverse it and eventually release you. The cave was deadly silent after that statement. Did Issei accidentally screw up with the dragon? What could they possibly be able to do to him? What would they do to him? He was panicking until he heard Veldora begin to laugh. I'll honestly do anything to quench the boredom. Let's try it. We're friends after all, right? Right, Issei quickly answered. He couldn't believe it. He really made friends with a dragon, of all things. And as friends, I feel it's appropriate we give each other names, right? Veldora asked. Issei was thinking of nicknames during that time. He casually agreed to it, not realizing the profound effects of a name in this world. A little brainstorming and Veldora was the first to come up with something. How about this? Does a name Tempest sound good for a family name? A name to connect the two of us. I like this thought, but how about Ableria instead? Sounds cooler in my opinion. I like it. I think I've got the perfect name for you then. Alphen Ableria. I like it too. As for you, since you already have the name Veldora, we can just add Ableria to it, right? Or we could maybe. But yet, how about this? Godzilla Ableria. Perfect, am I right? Come on. Yeah, I guess we can just go with Veldora Ableria. Ah well. Veldora nodded. Issei felt like something changed within him at that moment when he received his new name, but he didn't know what exactly. He brushed it off for now and focused on absorbing Veldora. He was making a pretty big gamble right now, but he was still willing to go about it. His body stretched to large enough proportions in order to consume Veldora, and he was off on his way after that. Great Sage was processing the information, but it was taking quite a bit of time. Issei couldn't simply sit in one place though, as the system processed everything. It wasn't affecting his movement at all, so Issei simply left the area. He went on to try and find an exit from the place. Unfortunately, that was more difficult than it seemed. Issei, along the way, began to absorb pretty much everything he saw in sight. Whether it was crystals or creatures he managed to defeat, he absorbed all of it. He even took on their forms from time to time just to see if they were better than the slime form. They covered more distance, but he could pretty much do all of what the creatures could do in a slime form. There wasn't much of a point to try and use the different forms beyond an intimidation factor. He didn't need that though with his current predicament. One day he heard some people talking. This was new. All of the monsters he had fought up until now didn't appear to be smart enough to have conversations or even some broken form of verbal communication. He would be lying if he said he wasn't interested in meeting these people, but he had better things to do. Mainly to get out of this cave. Issei fled this scene as soon as he saw an opening. From there he was pretty much just an incognito using the slime form. He wasn't interested in getting any attention by using one of the other forms. Despite that, he was still stopped by some goblins. These weren't the sort of goblins he usually saw in movies and video games. They were relatively scrawny and their equipment was the bare minimum. They wanted his help though. He was confused. Why were they asking for his help? He explained that he was just a slime, but the goblins laughed hearing this. There was no way he was just a slime with the magical aura that he was releasing. Slimes were weak in this world after all, and Issei was telling a completely different story. They explained their situation with the wolves and the disappearance of Veldora. Issei began to sweat, realizing just how important Veldora seemed to actually be. He really made a huge mistake back there. He felt guilty at that moment. It wouldn't be right for him to deny the goblins his help after he caused their whole issue in the first place. They led him back to their village, and after seeing all of the sick and defeated goblins, Issei's guilt had become immeasurable. He had to make it up to them in some form or fashion. He remembered absorbing some crystals back at the cave, and the system mentioned how they had some special properties. Maybe if he were to use the properties from the crystals in order to make something to heal. Oh, he could? Well, that was awesome in Issei's eyes. It didn't take long for Issei to go on a spree, healing all of the wounded. The goblins celebrated seeing their fallen comrades practically arise from the dead. Issei wasn't done there though. They needed to prepare for the arrival of the wolves. They set up defenses, weapons, and Issei set up invisible sharp webs in order to act as a second layer of defense in case the first did not work. The goblins were shaking in their boots by the time it was night though. Even with all of the preparations set in place, Issei couldn't blame the goblins if they decided to just flee the scene. It made sense after all. Why risk your life against something that, under any other circumstances, would just overpower you? The leader of this wolf pack ordered for a couple of the others to run forward and attack the defenses the goblins managed to build. The first was easy enough for them to charge through, but as soon as he tried that against Issei's invisible second barrier, wolf sushi was made. The leader of the wolves was shocked. He couldn't believe it. What was this blasphemy? Issei demanded for the wolves to surrender, but the leader refused to listen. They wanted the goblins' land, and they would be taking it by force if they had to. He didn't care about what Issei and the goblins had. He didn't see them as all that strong, even though Issei was releasing an intense amount of magical aura. This was a slime after all. The leader charged forward only to get cut down as well. Issei saw some use in their captain though and decided to absorb him. He transformed into their deceased leader and ordered for them to surrender. The animals weren't listening though. Issei was getting frustrated as he saw them continue to move up. He howled loudly in an attempt to make them yield. The vibrations that were being produced were strong. They were beginning to push the wolves back, although they tried to force their way through. Something red formed around Issei's front right paw not too long after, It almost looked like a gauntlet, but handcrafted to fit a creature like Issei's current form. His howls were amplified even further, forcing the wolves into submission. Issei sighed in exhaustion. He was feeling quite parched after that, although he didn't feel quite powerful during that moment. Well, he did feel quite powerful during that moment. He wondered why, though. So, this is my new host, a wolf. What kind of joke is this? A new voice questioned, causing Issei's eyes to widen. And yeah, that's basically all I have for right now, Titan Clan. This is part 1 to what if Issei was reincarnated as a slime, and I know that like so far this thing seems to be pretty close to like canon for like what Rimuru would do, but as the story progresses I can guarantee that well there are going to be quite a bit of shakeups during this canon. During this new what if. Anyways, it is your boy King Next signing out. Peace. Oh yeah, and you guys already know what to do at this point. Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother saying anymore. Peace.